Kim is joining us from Road and Track for a little bit, and I appreciate your time. Thank you. I know you've got a lot to do, so we won't take up too much of it, but I really appreciate the conversation, the insight. You've only walked around a few minutes here, but is there something special that you feel like, wow, I've been around a long time and I haven't seen that?
Well, one of the cars that stuck out at me was because I had seen it before. It's over where we were earlier. It's a '69 Hurst Olds, and my dad used to have one of those. So I was just a few years old, and I rode in the back of that thing. So I hadn't seen one for years. So that was probably one of the cars that I had a personal connection with. And I remember the story was that he had a Camaro Z28, and he was at the Chevy dealer getting service or something. And the truck pulled up at the Olds dealer across the street, and he saw the car up in the truck, and he walked over and traded in his Z28 at the time.
One thing we ought to do is do a little scene setter for the Hurst Olds, because it started life out as a 442, but Hurst being the supplier of shifters for so many of Detroit manufacturers, of course, big aftermarket component as well, they did a special run of Oldsmobiles, particularly 442s, but not limited to them. And one of the early results is the car we're about to look at right now.
Yeah, and like I said, I was all of 4 years old, so I can tell you a lot about the back seat of it. But the things I remember about it was the sound. That was probably my first exposure as a human to V8 power, V8 exhaust, V8 rumble. And it didn't hurt that the car looked very distinctive. It wasn't, the paint job especially really set it apart from other cars of that period.
Well, I imagine you probably remember the gauges very vividly too, because you'd probably peered over the back seat,
between the seats and looking at them. But the thing is, and then there was always the shifter. They just had that big black knob on the top, and and the scoops, and again, everything about it was just a little bit different, and also the rear wing. As a kid, I'd never seen anything with a rear wing, and there weren't a lot of cars that had that from that time.
Absolutely. So, Kim, this is the gentleman who owns the car.
Kim Wolfko, Bob, Road and Track.
Nice to meet you.
I've just been telling these guys that when I was a kid, my dad had one of these.
My dad had one of these also.
Oh, yeah.
That's why I was inspired to redo one, just like it.
No, it's a great car, and I actually haven't been able to get this close to one since probably like the early '70s. So it's fun. It's fun to see. It's a beautiful example.
Thank you.
I'd love you to take us through it and tell us, show us the engine, tell us about the interior, but and then maybe even let Kim sit in it, because I'd love to get his reaction after all these years. But what about your father had one? Mm-hmm. How long did it take for you to find this and then restore it?
I found this car in 2000. I was a truck driver, and I was going out through the country, and it just happened to see it in a machine shed beside the barn. And the piece of farm machinery sitting on the roof, and cats living in it, but it was all there. And it took me a while to buy the car off the original owner, but I talked to him, and I assured him that, look, this car, my dad had one just like this, that I was going to do this car just in honor of my dad, because my dad and I were real close. So he finally sold me the car, and he said, after we had finished the car, he said, I probably could have sold that car 20 times, but he said there was something about you that, that you were going to do it the right way and keep the car and honor your dad. So that's why I did it.
This is a Olds Hurst, which was started life as a 442, and then but in the factory was transformed by Hurst.
No, it was sent to Demmer Engineering in Lansing, Michigan, out of the factory. They were all white cars. There was no hood scoop, no wing, no gold paint, no pinstriping, no badging whatsoever. They were plain Jane white Oldsmobiles. They went to Demmer Engineering. One person, one man, put all this equipment on this car every day. One person did the pinstriping, put the badging, the scoop, and the mirrors. And
what was special about the Hurst shifter? I've never quite understood that.
It's just the way it's built. It can be shifted not manually, but you can shift it automatically by hand. It would just stay in first gear if you left it in first gear, or you could put it in drive and drive it like a grandma.
Very famously known as the His Hers.
That's exactly what that shifter is. It's a his her shifter.
So let's show off the interior first, I guess. And I think that basically here what you've got, if I understand correctly, is basically today you have paddle shifting.
You could explode the motor if if you left that in first gear, or you shifted from first to second and left it there, and you neglected to shift into third. I mean, that's how a lot of these cars got destroyed. The motors got destroyed because guys would just keep winding them out and forget to shift. This interior is still the original interior to the car. This driver's seat had a little tear in it. I bought a kit off of Legendary Interiors and took parts out of the kit to repair the seat, only to repair the seat. And in order to repair the seat correctly, you had to take the seat apart.
Right.
There's buns under there, foam buns. Well, while I had it apart, I put new buns just in the front. The back seat I didn't touch, just this seat here, and but the rest of the interior is all the original door panels. A few of the door handles, the crank handle is new, the knob on the lock and stuff like that, because the chrome back in those days deteriorated quite.
How did it look on the outside when you first discovered it?
Dull, dingy, beat up, scratched up.
So you go down and bare metal on it?
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
Solid,
yeah.
solid otherwise.
Solid otherwise. The original owner and his brother come out of the service in the early 70s, and he got the bright idea to talk his brother into try to drag race it. Let's try to drag race it. So they took a Sawzall and they cut about 2 or 3 inches out of this quarter here, and they cut into the outer wheelhouse. So I had to put about half quarters on it.
Does this bring back some memories for you now that the door's open?
Yeah, it's kind of wild. You don't think about something for decades, and then it's like, oh yeah, I remember those knobs and the dash and all. So it's
no air car. So in the summertime, it's black interior, just unbearable.
You get all the heat coming off that big engine.
Yeah, exactly.
It's funny how I feel like we have photographic memories to gauges and stuff, and you, again, like you said. You might not think about it for decades, and then all of a sudden something triggers your mind, and you can remember. My father had a Mercedes 300 turbo diesel, 300 SD, and it was 1982, and I can close my eyes right now and remember those gauges and the cluster of electronics underneath it, and it was very interesting that I can see that in my mind. You want to take a seat in it?
Yeah, because I'm not sure I've actually ever sat in one because I was too young.
Now, how fast, how much horsepower, how fast was this car?
They were rated at 380, and I think they were underrated, but that was insurance purposes and stuff back in the day. But the car's probably well over 400 horsepower.
Now, how fast have you gotten it up there?
I maybe 80, 90 mile an hour, and I don't.
What kind of gears you have in the back?
There's 342s in the rear.
Okay, so they're reasonably tall. You could so it's good for highway driving.
Yes.
But
Kim, what do you think?
It's a 455.
It's great, and I love how clean
another thing
it
that
is.
people might not be aware of, particularly if they have not seen these cars.
Whereas this one is just only what you need.
Yeah, it's gorgeous, right?
Yeah, it is, and it's a sort of a simpler time, which is nothing wrong with that.
I like that. You said I like how clean it is, because you do get in these cars and go, yeah, there's not a lot to push or touch or whatever, but it looks cool and it's functional.
Yeah, and you know what you're getting, and you know how to drive it right away.
Absolutely. What were you saying, Matt?
It's a 455. We just took a look at a couple of Buicks that were equipped with 455s. Pontiac had a 455. They are completely different engines. Okay? So when we take a look at the motor underneath the hood here, we're going to see an Oldsmobile 455.
This is certainly a great example of an Oldsmobile here. And I might ask you, I don't know if it's possible, but after that, is it possible to start it up so we can hear it?
Absolutely.
I love that. Oh,
there we go. Yeah, there's some power.
Do you remember this? Did your dad ever take you in the garage and open the hood and show you?
That I can't remember whether I actually saw the engine, but I can certainly appreciate it right now. No, it's beautiful.
Well, the Olds and the Buick too, but the Olds even more so. They were known for torque, and these things could really pull stumps.
500 foot-pounds.
Yeah,
500 foot-pounds.
Over 500 foot-pounds of torque.
Ooh. Does the front of the car lift up?
Yeah, and then the wing is designed as the faster you go, the wing is functional, it's just not on there for looks. As the faster you go, the more the back end of the car squats down for traction purposes and stuff like that.
No traction control back then, obviously.
No.
The 127, what is that?
Those are just factory markings. If you do some research, talk to the Hurst Olds advisors, what does that mean? That was on there when I restored the car. I reproduced that.
That's by the way, that's a old Harley or Indian. We're going to see those later. That gentleman, I believe, was here last year, and he'll definitely crank that up for us and show it to us. Certainly making quite a bit of noise here, but for good reason, and we're going to check that out in a little while. So this is, obviously something special. Do you know what the 127 means?
No, there was no rhyme or reason. If you talk to the Olds people, the visors that had these, that knows all about these cars, I even asked them, what does that 127 mean? It could be an inspection number, the guy coming down the line, his personal inspector number. I'll take a cheeseburger and 2 fries at 7 o'clock. That's might have been the message on down the line. The 0 with the X in it, maybe no defects or a defect was found.
Now, many times in these cars, nothing was ever perfect, right? Like there was overspray or whatever, and to get a judge to really give you a good mark, you almost have to have it that way, or you've kind of compensated to make it a perfect car, and they don't like that, right?
Yeah, but it depends on the judges too.
So did you put overspray and stuff?
No.
Yeah. And what do you think? The judging on these shows, they often look for things like no overspray and go, we'll take you down a point.
Yeah, I mean, again, it depends on the show. It depends on the philosophy of the show and the philosophy of the judging staff.
Do they want a cleaner look? I personally like the cleaner finished look. I went to a lot of expense and a lot of trouble to take this car apart and paint it in pieces, so I didn't have overspray. To me, an overspray, yeah, it was on there, but it's a little bit slop.
Let's start it up and hear it and give that Harley or Indian a run for its money. What do you think?
There we go. Good. Glad to do it.
That was a Harley, by the way. I was looking back while you guys were talking.
What was it?
It was a Harley, but a very early one, so
Yes.
it didn't sound like your typical Harley.
They have a lot of beautiful bikes here as well. We're going to get to that after lunch. Hold on, I'm gonna get the microphone back here so we can hear it go. That's music to my ears. That's what I like to hear.
Yeah, that sounds right.
Dr. Oldsmobile's finest. That Dr. Oldsmobile was part of the ad campaign at the time for their muscle cars.
You did a great job. Congratulations. Thanks for your time.
Yeah, thank you.
The other slogan was "Drive a young mobile from Oldsmobile."